I'm not giving to us.
Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Hare Krishna. So today is a wonderful occasion of the disappearance of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. And we are reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 7, text 163. Ei Panchatattva Rupe Shri Krishna Chaitanya Krishna Nama Prema Diya Vishwa Koilo Dhanya Ei Panchatattva Rupe Shri Krishna Chaitanya Krishna Nama Prema Diya Vishwa Koilo Dhanya Ei Pancha Tattva Rupe Shri Krishna Chaitanya Krishna Nama Prema Diya Vishwa Koilo Dhanya Ei Pancha Tattva Rupe Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nama Prema Diya Vishwa Koilo Dhanya Ei Pancha Tattva Rupe Shri Krishna Chaitanya Krishna Nama Prema Diya Vishwa Koilo Dhanya Ei Panchatattva Rupe Shri Krishna Chaitanya Krishna Nama Prema Diya Vishwa Koilo Dhanya. Ladies. Hey Pancha Tattva Rupe Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Krishna Nama Prema Diya Vishwa Koilo Dhanya. Hey Pancha Tattva Rupe Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Krishna Nama Prema Diya Vishwa Koilo Dhanya. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Translation. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates of the Panchatattva distributed the holy name of the Lord to invoke love of Godhead throughout the universe, and thus the entire universe was thankful. Purport. Here it is said that Lord Chaitanya made the entire universe thankful to him for propagating the Sankirtan movement with his associates. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has already sanctified the entire universe by his presence 500 years ago, and therefore anyone who attempts to serve Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sincerely by following in his footsteps and following the instructions of the Acharyas will successfully be able to preach the holy names of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra all over the universe. There are some foolish critics who say that Europeans and Americans cannot be offered sannyas. But here we find that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to preach the Sankirtan movement all over the universe. For preaching work, sannyasis are essential. These critics think that only Indians or Hindus should be offered sannyas to preach, but their knowledge is practically nil. Without sannyasis, the preaching work will be impeded. Therefore, under the instruction of Lord Chaitanya and with the blessings of his associates, there should be no discrimination in this matter. But people in all parts of the world should be trained to preach and given sannyas so that the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement will expand boundlessly. We do not care about the criticism of fools. We shall go on with our work and simply depend on the blessings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, the Panchatattva. Om Adhyanti Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today's day is incredibly auspicious because the coming and the going of great personalities is not different. When they come, it's a blessing, and when they leave a lot of empowerment for the followers to continue. And hence, their legacy, as we see in this verse, Mahaprabhu's legacy is to distribute the holy name, the love of Godhead all over the universe. And that legacy is left for the following generation to fulfill. So just after this verse we see that Mahaprabhu He's in Jagannath Puri, and it is also mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat how Mahaprabhu actually decides to go to South India under the pretext of trying to find his brother. In reality, he wants to go to South India to distribute the message of love of Godhead, the Sankirtan movement. So the initiation of the Sankirtan movement happens by Mahaprabhu leaving Jagannath Puri to go to South India and touring all of India and making so many wonderful personalities into devotees. This is mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat. What is the first stop he takes when he leaves Jagannath Puri? Anyone knows? Before leaving for the South India Yatra, he stops at Alalnath. And we see, if you go to Alalnath, even today, you see that the Mahaprabhu's entire bodily form got imprinted in stone. So we can see that in Alalnath. And at Alalnath, there was a wonderful prediction, a prophecy that was made. The prophecy that was made at Alalnath was made by Lord Nityananda. And the prophecy was, in every town and village, your name will be glorified. This prophecy was made when Mahaprabhu left for South India. That is the inauguration of the Sankirtan movement. And we see that not only Mahaprabhu left, Mahaprabhu wanted to, as Prabhupada says in the purport, let this Krishna consciousness movement spread all over the universe. Mahaprabhu sent Nityananda Prabhu to Bengal. So if you speak to any Bengalis, they all know Nityananda. They know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, but through Nityananda, because Nityananda Prabhu went to Bengal. And we see the 6 Goswamis, they were sent to Vrindavan to excavate the places of pastimes of Lord Krishna. And then we see in Vrindavan itself, Jiva Goswami, the last of the Goswamis. Why the last of the Goswamis? Because he was the last one alive on the planet. He was the last Goswami. He had 3 disciples, Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamananda, and Srinivas. And he sent these 3 in 3 directions in the places that they were born. It's in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. So he sent them with the books of the Goswamis to distribute these books to all the scholars in their region, because they were written in Sanskrit. So this is the inauguration of the book distribution movement done by Jiva Goswami from Radha Damodar Mandir, which is the very place where Srila Prabhupada stayed before coming to the West to distribute this message of Godhead. So we see the heart of the Sankirtan movement and the connection of the Sankirtan movement. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, of course, Mahaprabhu gave this order to Nityananda, Jiva Goswami gave the order to his 3 disciples, and then due to passage of time and also certain rulers in India like the fearsome Aurangzeb, who was quite brutal on all communities, on everyone practically. Slowly and slowly the mainstream Vaishnavism declined. And as Vaishnavism declined, it became just superficial, without philosophy. People would practice worshipping of Radha Krishna under the direction of the caste Goswamis and take it very cheaply. And they would consider the love affair between Radha and Krishna to be like a mundane love affair, not understanding that it is the Supreme Lord and the energy of the Lord. Like Srila Prabhupada says, sun and sunlight. So there were so many concoctions and so many different Sahajya groups that came up. Sakhi Beki, Gauranga Nagari, at one point I gave a class on all of these different Sahajya groups here in Manor. And all these Sahajya groups, the idea is very simple, that Krishna consciousness is very Sahaj. Sahaj means, in Bengali, very easy. You don't have to follow any principles. You can eat, drink and be merry, do what you want, have illegitimate relationships, alcohol, everything is fine as long as you're chanting Hare Krishna. Everything is pure. So such nonsensical ideas were being promoted. Slowly the movement declined, and then came the British Raj. And in British Raj, the only thing that was sensible was Christianity. And here in the House of Parliament, there was a proclamation made that the Indian Empire is full of heathens, backward people who need to be civilized and brought to the message of Lord Jesus Christ. So that was the proclaimed idea behind. So everything that was Christian was wonderful. The Victorian sensibilities and mannerisms were well regarded. And in that scenario, the entire Gaudiya Vaishnava movement, which was inaugurated by Mahaprabhu, completely declined. So then came Bhaktivedanta Thakur. And Bhaktivedanta Thakur, of course, during his appearance day or disappearance day, we can talk about him. So I will just briefly say that he was the one who started to counter-influence. So there was the British Raj, who considered everything which was Hindu or Indian to be, or Sanatan Dharma to be, just nonsense, utter nonsense, is what they said. As they were not able to understand and appreciate the scriptures. At that time, there was a movement called Bhadralok, which was started by some Indians. The Bhadralok movement wanted to justify the practices of Hinduism and purge some practices of Hinduism. For example, they didn't believe in deity worship. They said, why you want to worship a stone? There are so many stones. Why you want to worship a stone? So this deity worship is nonsense. Chanting of her holy name is only sentimental. It's nonsense. So what is good? Discussing philosophy. So they opened Theosophical Society, Blavatsky, and so many. The Bhadralok movement was to purge Hinduism of all its so-called orthodoxity. And Bhaktivedanta Thakur appeared at that time. And he initially took part in the Bhadralok movement, only later to counter it and to establish Vaishnavism. Bhaktivedanta Thakur married Bhagavati Devi, and when he was 31 years old, in 1869, Bhaktivedanta Thakur was an officer, worked for the British government. He was deputed to Jagannath Puri in 1869. Young man, 31-year-old. He already had 6 children by then. So with his 6 children, he went to Jagannath Puri, and there was a person, Ramchandra Arya, who had a beautiful house right on the main road called the Grant Road, on which the Rath Yatra procession goes. So he rented that house from Ramachandra Arya, and he was living there with his wife. And he was thinking, how will I ever achieve the mission of Mahaprabhu to distribute the holy names, the love of Godhead all over the universe. As he was meditating, he was a deputy magistrate for the government in Jagannath Puri and a deputy collector as well. So he used to collect the taxes on behalf of the government. One day, after visiting Jagannath Mandir, coming back, he took some rest in the afternoon. And during that time, he had a dream. It's a very secret, beautiful dream. In the dream, he got woken up by Lord Jagannath. And Lord Jagannath told him, Kedarnath, I have not invited you here, called you here to serve the British government. I have called you here so that you may re-establish the Vaishnava movement, the movement of Lord Chaitanya. Kedarnath said, but Lord Jagannath, I've got no means. I'm practically alone. How will I achieve this mission? If you so wish, please send me one of your personal associates to establish this mission. And Jagannath said, I shall send you my personal associate. Go and worship Bimala Devi in the Jagannath Mandir and give her prasad to your wife, Bhagavati. And she shall have my associate. She shall have a son who will be my associate. So later on, of course, immediately Bhaktivinoda Thakur, after waking up, went to Bimala Devi, got the prasad. Bhagavati Devi had the prasad, and 9 months from then, on 1st of January 1874, appeared a beautiful boy who Bhaktivinoda Thakur named Bimala Prasad, because he was the Prasad of Bimala Devi. Bimala Prasad was born as the 7th child. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had 14 children, 1-4, and he was the 7th. Bimala Prasad later on to become Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. When he was only 6 months old, Bimala Prasad and his mother, Bhagavati Devi, they were in the home. And the reverse Rath Yatra from Gundicha to Puri Mandir was taking place. And the Rath somehow stopped right in front of the gate. So now if you go to Puri, you have Gaudiya Math, Chaitanya Gaudiya Math. That is the place where Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was born, and he grew up there in early years. So that very place, the Rath stopped. And Bhagavati Devi always knew that this baby is special. This child is special. Because even when he was born with an umbilical cord which went around like this. So she knew this is a Brahmana baby. Already initiated, double initiated at birth. It's a very special baby, but at 6 months old, 3 days the Rath would not move. So many pandas, they tried so many things. And there was so much commotion. And if it's right outside your house, you want to go and see. So she stepped out with little 6-month-old Bimala Prasad. And as soon as she went and took darshan of Jagannath, who was on the cart, the garland of Jagannath fell. And right around her neck and that of Bimala Prasad. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur standing there, he understood. Lord Jagannath has fulfilled his promise by sending his dear servant. And at that very moment, the pandas who were trying to pull Jagannath Rath, immediately the Rath started moving. So he was as if just waiting for Bimala Prasad to come out. This child was very, very special. When he was 7 years old, he was so attached to chanting the holy names that Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave him initiation in Harinam. He gave him the beads and said, please chant. And as soon as he gave him the beads, immediately he started chanting non-stop until Bhaktivedanta Thakur told him, okay, you have to stop after 1 lakh names. 1 lakh names is 64 rounds. So every day he would chant 64 rounds. Since he was 7 years old, he would chant 64 rounds. When he was 8 years old, they moved to Calcutta, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was excavating foundation of the place, which he later on named Bhakti Bhavan. And while the excavation was going on, they discovered a deity of Kurmadev. And immediately Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, 8-year-old boy, wanted to worship this Kurmadev. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur gifted him the Kurmadev and he started worshipping Kurmadev, which he worshipped all throughout his life. Kurmadev gives us stability. Worship of Kurmadev gives us stability in our spiritual life and even our material life. So he worshipped Kurmadev. At 9 years old, he had mastered the entire Bhagavad Gita, memorized all 700 verses with meaning, and he could even speak and give purports. That was his ability. His determination was such that once Bhaktivinoda Thakur had got mangoes, and Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur loved mangoes. So he grabbed the mango and he put it in his mouth. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, "Oh, this mango was not offered." Hearing that, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur took a vow that I shall never have a mango for the rest of my life. Imagine a 9-year-old boy taking that vow. And even when, as a great acharya, he was offered by his disciples, he was offered mangoes, he would say, "No, I'm an offender. I cannot eat mangoes." That was his determination. When he was 12 years old, in 1886, he was already well versed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Bhagavad Gita. And a 12-year-old boy, in 1886, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had started Sajjana Toshini, a magazine for the devotees, for the Vaishnava community, or people in general to appreciate the Vaishnavas. So the Sajjana Toshini, Bhaktivinoda Thakur would write articles after articles, but he needed a proofreader. Who was the proofreader? The 12-year-old boy, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was a proofreader for the articles written by Bhaktivinoda. At the age of 13, he started studying Jyotisha, astronomy. And there is a book on astronomy, ancient book, which is known as Surya Siddhanta. He mastered the Surya Siddhanta and he got admission in college at the age of 13. And because he had mastered Surya Siddhanta, he was awarded the title Siddhanta Saraswati. That is how he got the title Siddhanta Saraswati. Soon he was recognized amongst his peers as a living encyclopedia. Someone whom you could ask anything and he would be able to quote verbatim. Phenomenal memory, deep devotion and practice of Krishna consciousness that he had acquired from his father. At the age of 17, he had disagreement with Mahesh Chandra, the principal of the College of Astronomy. He said, "Your calculations are rubbish. What I am telling you is correct." And Mahesh Chandra is the principal, not even a professor, he's the principal. He's the dean. He thought, how can an ordinary student counter me? Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, "Before you kick me out, I leave. I resign, I go." So he left. In his class was the king of Tripura. See, those days, India was ruled by princely states, many, many small states. 664 princely states were there in India. So the kingdom of Tripura was ruled by one king Manakya, Bir Chandra Manakya, who was also his classmate. So Bir Chandra Manakya said, "You come and become my court historian, and you become my court mathematician and Jyotisha." Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, "Okay." So he left to join the king. But the following year, the king died. And his ministers asked Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur to teach the king's children. The king was much older than Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was not happy to become an ordinary teacher for ordinary prince or princes of Tripura. So he wondered, what am I doing? Is this the goal of my life? You see, we all come at a point when we say, is this what I really want to do? And that was that moment when Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, 21-year-old, decided, I need to go to my father and ask him, what is the goal of my life? So although he was chanting, he was already initiated by Bhaktivedanta Thakur. He hadn't dedicated his life yet. So he went to Bhaktivedanta Thakur. Bhaktivedanta Thakur had moved to Navadvip. So he went to Navadvip. Just across the Jalangi is a beautiful island called Godrumadvip. At Godrumadvip, there is a beautiful kunja called Surabhi Kunja. And that is the place where Nityananda Prabhu went under the direction of Mahaprabhu, and he started the Namahatta. We have Khoda Nitai, very nice. Khoda Nitai is a very nice song where it says that how Nityananda Prabhu himself became the distributor of holy names. This is where it happened, Surabhi Kunj. Just opposite Surabhi Kunj. When I say opposite, I don't even mean opposite. If where Prabhupada is there is Surabhi Kunj, where the curtains are there, that is where Bhaktivedanta Thakur decided to have his own body. Body means house. He called it Swananda Sukhada Kunj. Swa Ananda Sukhada Kunj. That small grove where one attains deep happiness. And from there, he could see Yogapeeth, and he saw the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. So if you go to Mayapur, you can still go to Godrumadvip and visit his house. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, 21-year-old, giving up the service of the king of Tripura, went back home, now to Navadvip. And there he asked his father, what shall I do? His father told him, there is no greater service than to purify yourself by chanting the holy names. Just this one instruction. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, I shall chant 1 billion names. So he went and he chanted 1 billion names for several years. 1 billion names total is, I don't know how many years. Somebody can do the mathematical calculation. Only eating very little. And then when he came back, Bhaktivedanta Thakur told him, you need to find a practicing Vaishnava. You see, there are many kinds of Vaishnavas. Some inspire us through philosophy. Others inspire us through their practice. And yet others inspire us by their very presence. These are the three categories. Prachar, Achar and Astitva. Three types. By their very presence, some inspire. Some by preaching, some by behaving. So, by the very presence of this personality who used to live in Bhaktivedanta Thakur's house, who was a disciple of Bhaktivinoda, called Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, he inspired Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And at the age of 27, 1901, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur took initiation from Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. And Gaur Kishodas Babaji Maharaj gave him the name Shri Varshabhanavi Daita Das. Varshabhanavi is the beloved daughter of Vrishabhanu Maharaj, Srimati Radharani. Daita means dear. Das means servant. The servant of one who is dear to the daughter of Vrishabhanu, or the servant of Krishna, who is dear to the daughter of Vrishabhanu. So Shri Varshabhanavi Daita Das was the name given by Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. After that, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur decided to tour South India on a preaching mission. In 1904, when he was 30 years old, Bhaktivedanta Thakur, seeing the fervor, the spirit he had, gave him the name Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. He was already known as Siddhanta Saraswati, and the title Bhakti was added by Bhaktivedanta Thakur to him. But the most defining moment of Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's life was the confrontation that happened in Midnapore. So we are talking 1901. In 1911, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is a 37-year-old man. He's decided to not marry. When his father asked him, his mother asked him to get married. And he would repeat this to his disciples many times. He would say, if I can guarantee that my children would be 100% Krishna conscious, pure devotees, then I would get married and have 100 children. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would say. But nobody can guarantee. So he said, then why marry? So he was a Naishtika Brahmachari. In 1911, in Midnapore, there was an argument by the Smarta Brahmanas. Smarta are those who are born in Brahmana families. The argument they had was two things. Number one, who is allowed to worship on the altar? Who is allowed to worship Shaligram Shila? Can Vaishnavas worship Shaligram Shila just because they have Vaishnav Diksha? And number two, can Vaishnavas give Diksha to those who are of the lower category? Shudras, Panchamas, all kinds of people, lower caste. Could Vaishnavas give Diksha? If the answer is yes, then that means Vaishnavas will raise even a Shudra to a Vaishnava, and then Vaishnava will be able to worship on the altar. So these Smarta Brahmanas did not like the idea. They sent an invitation to Kedarnath. Kedar Babu, please come, put your point forward. But Kedarnath was already failing, his health was failing. And so he asked his son, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to go to Midnapore to represent him. And he produced a paper which he read, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The name of the paper was Vaishnava Brahmana. Vaishnava and Brahmana. And in the audience were many personalities, many Brahmanas, many great scholars.